Senator Joni Ernst had reportedly been lobbying against Donald Trump's pick for Defense Secretary and Pete Hegseth. However, she took a second meeting with Hegseth, so could she be softening her stance? Here to discuss is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and his long-awaited return, Chris Bedford, our senior political editor. So, Chris, in a statement today, Ernst said that she supports Pete through this process. Now, she says, "I look forward to a fair hearing based on truth, not anonymous sources." So is she actually going to follow through with this change of heart?
Well, first I got to get to some important business, which is, Matt, we can't both just quit shaving. Right now, I'm on a mission now. I've been sent by my wife. She says, I don't like the short beard anymore. It's winter. But I tell you what, maybe I'll give in first because I'm not actually as big a fan. It gets a little itchy, even in the wintertime. But it's just a great day to come back. Great day to jump back into the news because we talked about this, probably talked about this on literally like the last day I was here before a surprise precipitous labor ended up with me almost having to become a midwife. This Republican Senate is really the holdout against Donald Trump. They're different from the rest of the GOP. They're different from the House. They're different from the base for sure. They're different from a lot of where the voters are. And even though Mitch McConnell's no longer the leader, he still has a lot of power. And there's just an incredible arrogance amongst the Republican senators. People like Joni Ernst just really do believe that they're untouchable, that nothing, the most popularly elected Republican president in modern history, that she's now in charge, that she gets to pick the nominees, that she can vote for Joe Biden's completely disastrous Secretary of Defense, but she can thumb her nose at the kind of conservative populist remaking of the Department of Defense and this administration's mandate given to it by the American people. This is bad advice. The rumor around town is that a lot of this is coming from our chief of staff, who is kind of classically in the never Trump camp. I've not been able to confirm that myself. I don't know the chief of staff personally, but I've heard that from all the people who've had to work with him. And she thought she could just get away with this. And there's been an intense level of pressure on her, both from at home. Remember, she's got a campaign that she has to run for re-election in 2 years. I think she's actually probably instigated the primary challenge against her with this move. And it lines up with a lot of other squishy and not very helpful moves that she's made over the years, the not too long time that she's been in Washington, D.C. But she heard pretty quickly. There was folks all up and down the line, not just the online people, but the voters, Republican people who supported Donald Trump, in the independents who supported Donald Trump, the people who wanted change in Washington, that this was not going to be allowed. And even for people who maybe didn't think that Hegseth may have been the best choice, they ended up rallying behind him because they recognized that if the obstinate Republicans in the Mitch McConnell camp, which he very soundly is, can just sabotage whichever aspect they don't like of this new agenda, then nothing's actually going to get done. And people are really sick with people like Joni Ernst being a rubber stamp for folks like Joe Biden, and then trying to meddle and change their ways when it comes to Donald Trump. So this statement I see today, it's not quite a full-throated, I'm going to vote for him endorsement. It is a massive shift. It is damage control. You see her out there posting now pictures with Kash Patel, his Donald Trump's nominee to
Yes.
run the FBI. And you know that she's just hoping that she can be forgiven before anyone actually puts together a serious primary challenge to her.
Yeah, that pictures is what I was going to ask you about. First off, I commit to shaving in this new year. I need to shave more, but what happened, I need to let you know, and our audience, is that I had such a good time at the Christmas party that turned into a karaoke party Friday night.
Christmas party. Yeah.
That I'm just recovering now, and I really haven't even looked in the mirror since. It was a very good time. Lots of singers in this building, as it turns out. Speaking of pictures, we're also going to need pictures. People are going to need to see at least one baby picture if you are so willing to do so in the future, because we do need to talk about that. With Ernst, though, real quick, I mean, it is a sea change. You can see her backing off and all of a sudden taking these pictures. Does it matter that will there be consequences, do you think? You think this anger is going to carry over? Because, senators do this all the time, right? I mean, this is what they do. They anger everyone when they think they can, and they have time to do it, and then everyone forgets about it. Do you think this really has legs, what's going on here?
It's hard to tell. I mean, you've seen ever since the Tea Party days in particular, different groups of outsiders seizing control of Republican Party apparatuses in the states. And sometimes that is successful, but a lot of times it's just a lot of people saying rah, 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 and then the hard actual work. And it does take real work. You can't just tweet an actual candidate into existence to take out a powerful sitting senator. You can't just complain at town halls until a powerful sitting senator is taken down. It takes a real ground surge. But if you are someone who's sick of her leadership in the state, you've got to be, and you're a serious person, you've got to be saying, well, this is an opportunity here to go at a sitting Republican with base backing, with Donald Trump's backing. But then again, you never know. Donald Trump is so magnanimous when you change your tune. He'll go after people all the way to the very hilt when they won't change their tune on him. But you could be, I've been in the room multiple times where he's looked at someone who signed their name, for example, to a Never Trump National Review cover, for example. And he'll just laugh and say, you used to not like me, but now you like me. And that's all I care about. So you can't really count on his backing if she actually does fall in line on this issue. And a lot of this is going to depend on what Mitch McConnell is doing. The Republicans, I think, after this kind of a whipping that they've received at the hands of the base and also members of the administration, are going to be wanting to pull back. But old man Mitch McConnell is in much more in a burn it all down mood. When he accepted his Lifetime Achievement Award at the AEI dinner just last month, even though Donald Trump had just been historically reelected, he used it to attack Trump repeatedly, over and over again, in a room full of Washington, D.C. elites and donors dressed up in tuxedos. He's not going to give in here. So in order to actually try to really beat him and people who at least used to do everything he said, like Joni Ernst, there's going to need to be real consequences for McConnell and his network.
Well, let's look at Donald Trump. And we know that he's out there and talking about immigration all the time, but now he's out there talking about birthright citizenship as well. So he was interviewed with NBC's Kristen Welker and made several promises on what he plans to do. Take a look.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
You know, we're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
Chris, you're back. I didn't know if we were going to have birthright citizenship on the bingo card for the day that you came back, but here we are.
I kind of love it. I mean, this shows you how far the Overton window has shifted. There was a period of time where Matt and I listened to Michael Anton talk about that, who's going into administration, talked about, heard Stephen Miller talking about that, but really no one else. It wasn't something that you could bring up. Even when you talk about immigration, we saw this especially in 2016 during the Republican primary. Before you were allowed to criticize illegal narco-terrorist gangs and human smuggling operations being in control of our border, you had to sing this swan song, this beautiful ode to the founding documents of America and how we're a nation of immigrants and how this country was built by illegals from El Salvador and Guatemala, which is obviously completely not true. That they are the backbone of this country. People coming in from Somalia, people coming in from Haiti, people coming in from all over the world are the ones who are the builders of this country. Even people who are immigration hawks had to say that and do this whole hemming and hawing. And only folks, maybe in the intellectual circles, were willing to say, it's a real problem, this complete change that we have in the United States on birthright citizenship. Now, I don't think that they're going to have a lot of luck doing this. I think they're going to have a very difficult time with the courts. But it should that they're willing to talk about it, that they're starting the ball on the other team's goal line as opposed to on their own, which is how Republicans usually negotiate, is a good sign for immigration hawks. Talking to senior members of the administration, as I was trying to just get back into the game over this past weekend, about how serious they are about their immigration policy, It is deadly serious. They don't want it. This is so weird for Republicans. They don't want it weighed down by tax fights. They don't want to attach it to anything. They want money in the first month of the Congress, first month of the new administration, in the billions of dollars sent for a massive operation to completely shift how immigration has been treated in this country, to do actual deportation, something that is difficult. It's going to take political stomach. The first time you see people who are unhappy about being forced to leave this country because they're here illegally, it's going to make some people quake. It's going to make the Joni Ernsts of the world very uncomfortable. But the American people have now 3 times essentially backed that aspect of Donald Trump's agenda, and it's central to his success.
So we have to just, I mean, the birthright citizenship thing we need to say, and yeah, I can say this as a Claremont person. Claremont was one of the only people talking about this in terms of its constitutionality, but people don't realize, and Mike Lee does. He just came out and said that interview and what she said is just false. The Constitution does not say that there's such a thing as birthright citizenship. Courts have interpreted it a certain way, but it really is remarkable that now all of a sudden Mike Lee is coming out and saying that on the one hand, and before you mentioned Anton, I mean, Michael Anton went in the Washington Post. Remember, it's 2016, I think. They're like, oh, we'll have people who are, explaining Trump write for us. And they basically had him write 2 columns, and he wrote one about birthright, and they were like, oh, actually, we can't even print this, right? We can't even print this. We don't want you writing anymore. So, I mean, talk about a sea change. We've come a long way.